call to order the regular meeting of the Anchorage Assembly for the Municipality of Anchorage for July the 9th, 2013. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll? Here.
Present.
Here. He will be phoning in momentarily. Sorry. Mr. Flynn will be phoning in as well.
Mr. Trombley?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Honored to be here.
Mr. Honeman?
Here.
Ms. Johnson? Here.
Here. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Trainee, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Chairman.
We have minutes to approve this evening, and we have the minutes from the regular meeting of February 12th, regular meeting February 26th, continued regular meeting of February the 27th, special meeting for March the 5th, continued special meeting March 6th, continued special meeting March 11th, the regular meeting for March 12th, and we have the minutes for regular meeting March 26th, regular meeting April 9th, regular meeting April 16th, and regular meeting April 23rd. The chair would take a motion to approve.
Move to approve all minutes mentioned by the chair.
And well, I've got a second, and I will note that Mr. Steele and Ms. Dembowski were here only for, I believe, the meeting of April 16th and 23rd. Am I correct? So we'll excuse your vote on the other minutes. Any changes or amendments to the minutes as presented? Seeing, hearing none, any objection to the approval of the minutes? Thank you. The minutes have been approved. Mr. Mayor, a report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. Recently, just now handed out to you was the final report from the USS Anchorage Commissioning Committee, which gives you the summary of the activities and the financials. And as you'll see, approximately $70,000 will be coming back to the municipality after the commissioning expenses. So that's in front of you. And we had a presentation yesterday at the Chamber of Commerce. There'll be a presentation tomorrow at the museum from 6 to 8 from the Klingstubbins architectural firm and their partners, Boston Global Investors, regarding the Ship Creek development planning. So if Assembly members are able to attend at the museum tomorrow, I know some people were at the chamber lunch. Very informative and very exciting about the potential for what can happen down there. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the only thing that I have to comment on this evening is the appreciation of the return of the sunny weather and the fact that hopefully the mosquitoes will not return with it because they've started to back off a little bit. So, and I want all the community to know that that has been a gift basically from the Assembly. We did that through resolution. And we will begin with our regular report, starting with you, Mr. Birch.
We did have an AMATS Policy Committee meeting on the 27th, and basically that's as kind of business as usual, but approved the upcoming plan. Thank you.
Ms. Dembowski.
I have no official report, but I would like to share that on June 29th, I did represent the Assembly at the Polynesian Flag Day celebration on the Park Strip. It was a great time, and I was happy to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Steele.
No report.
Thank you. Is Mr. Flynn or Mr. Starr on the phone as of yet? It would appear not. Mr. Trombley.
Ethics and Elections Committee met on June 24th and one of the item that was on the agenda was dealing with the Anchorage School District and teachers that are accepting gifts over $50. For those on the body that know, for the public that don't know, as school district employees are not allowed to accept gifts over $50. And the challenge is that some of them, at least on one occasion, they have accepted gifts of up to $2,000, not in cash, but as far as someone saying, I'd like to send you to this conference, and it had a $2,000 value. And the challenge came in is that those individuals were accepting those gifts and then filling out the paperwork acknowledging that they have accepted the gift, when in fact they're not allowed to accept the gift at all. And so there's an educational aspect that the school district needs to do with teachers as far as educating them on what the processes that they're supposed to follow. And so at the meeting, Mr. Trainey was there, Mr. Honeman was there, and we had representation from the school district, which I'm blanking her name, Miss Kathleen Plunkett was there, as well as three members from the Ethics Commission. And what the Ethics Commission requested, that they would like to go through the Ethics Code and recommend changes to the Assembly. They said that they could get those recommended changes to us by July 31st. And then I said that what I would like is to have a committee of the whole of the entire body to review those changes in a work session, and then we'll take that piece of legislation or that ordinance, and under Mr. Trainey's advisement, we have a joint school district assembly meeting in September, and so we'd like to review that with the school board and the assembly, and then I'd like to have another work session in September and hopefully possibly a vote in September, October on those changes. And then, Mr. Chairman, I usually don't comment on these kind of things, but in light of the Mayor's Unity Dinner that's coming up, I couldn't help but reflect on the recent Supreme Court decision on the Defense of Marriage Act. And I found it interesting in reading through that, the opinion, rather the affirmative and the dissenting opinion, is that the Supreme Court felt it in their purview to judge and those who support traditional marriage having malice in their heart in doing so. And so I know that Anchorage can rise above that feeling, and that in the Unity Dinner coming up, I hope that we can come together as a community and realize that we're not always going to agree. That doesn't mean that when we do disagree, that it's due to malice or purposeful intent to harm other people. So that is all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go back. I've either got Mr. Flynn or Mr. Starr on the phone. Do I? Maybe not. Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Patrick.
Mr. Flynn, you have any comments in report, committee report?
Nothing at this time, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But before I begin my report, just a quick question to Mr. Trombley, if I may. What Unity Dinner?
I believe there's something coming up in July. There's tickets are available until July 19th. Am I correct on that, Mr. Mayor? Maybe it's not Unity Dinner. I don't know the exact title of it.
I'm asking because I know we used to have something similar, and if there is such a thing, I'd really like to know about it. Mr. Mayor, is there going to be a Unity Dinner?
There is, but I believe it's in August.
Okay.
I saw the advertisements on the Ombudsman's office door, and so I know tickets are available until the 19th. I thought it was July, but
Yeah,
August. Thank you, Mr.
I
Mayor.
think it's August. I'll double check.
Okay, and I don't have to hear more about it now, but I'd love to hear more about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, for my report. The Audit Committee is scheduled to meet on July 18 from 1 to 2 o'clock to discuss revising the 2013 audit plan to add the Chugach Fire Department to the plan. And there's been some emails back and forth between Mr. Starr and Ms. Demboski, because this was a request from former Assembly member Debbie Osiander. But just so you know, folks, it's scheduled, and if for some reason we don't need to have it, that's fine. And the reason why we're having a meeting is because, as I brought out at the last meeting, whenever there's any changes to the audit plan, the Audit Committee has to review the changes. So that's what that meeting's all about. But if we don't have to have it, please let me know ahead of time. Also, during the week of June 25th, I traveled to Washington, D.C. as a board member of the National League of Cities for our summer board meeting. It was really, really a great meeting. We had some really great dialogue, because as you know, the NLC is nonpartisan. We have Republicans, Democrats, everybody is part of the National League of Cities. But we had some really wonderful dialogue and opinions because there was a resolution brought forward by one of the committees of the National League of Cities on the Defense of Marriage Act. And the majority of the board voted to make it NLC policy, which was consistent with the Supreme Court ruling. And it was ironic that at the same time that we were having our vote, the Supreme Court were having their vote. I also had the privilege of being at the Capitol when the Senate passed the immigration reform bill. I was really honored to be there, thanks to a couple of tickets provided by Senator Begich's office. The NLC officers and 2 board members had the opportunity to participate in a small group meeting with Senator Al Franken from Minnesota and Representative Steve Womack from Arkansas. And as a full group, we also heard from our, an ally, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who visited Anchorage, I think it was a year or so ago. And we were able to sit with her and share views with key staffs from the office of U.S. Senator Chris Coons from Delaware and the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. And it was just a really great meeting, and we had excellent discussion on National League of Cities strategic planning efforts that was facilitated by Elizabeth Bailey from 2B Communications. And I made copies of our overview of the strategic plan for everybody, so you should have this on your desk. I know we have a lot to read, but it's some really, really good reading. 9 pages, just take a look at it because it's really good reading. And one more thing, Mr. Chairman. Finally, the Fall National League of Cities Conference is going to be held closer to home. It's going to be held in Seattle. That's not that far away from Anchorage, and I would like to encourage more of my colleagues to try and attend this conference because we've been members for 50 years. It's a wonderful organization. We sit with people who do the same things that we do from all over the country, and I think you'd really enjoy participating in it. So I'd like to encourage you to look into attending that. It's November 13th through the 16th. With that said, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Trini, you've been on my screen, then you've been off my screen, and...
Adam covered what I wanted to deal with.
Okay.
Which is the joint meeting we're going to have with the school board, because I want the ethics board there to talk to both the assembly and the school board, so we're going to take care of that.
Excellent.
Anything else, sir?
Okay. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to appreciate the update from Ms. Gray Jackson, and I'll try to make it to the November NLC to make sure that my schedule fits within that. Looks like a good opportunity. The Public Safety Committee met this past month in June. If you recall, we took up the issue of the Executive Office Lounge. There's a transfer of ownership, and I don't believe we have any matters. We had a conditional protest looking at their transfer due to a recent incident that occurred outside their premise, their business. But with the police department's concurrence, unless we hear otherwise, I know there was a good report with both the chief and Captain Fanning, and they had done some results reviews, and it appears that the management transfer business had been going on since late March. However, the business had closed almost the entire month of April, and so the incident that happened outside their club wasn't precipitated by actually drinking going on in the business. Someone had sought or happenstance come across some people that were patrons inside the premise. They were seeking them for more of a retaliation for actually a reporting of a crime to the police. So they're very concerned, of course, as business owners. They've taken steps to both increase and better train their staff internally and also hired a contractor externally to provide security, and they've updated their staff to make sure that they have diligent reporting and that they want to be partners. So we've come to an agreement that we'll review their license in 1 year's time from the Assembly. So it'd be my suggestion through the concurrence of the Public Safety Committee that this body lift the protest, that we allow the transfer to occur. And other than that, we do have, if you recall, the third week third Thursdays in the month as opposed to the second, because of some conflicting use of the room. So we will be meeting next Wednesday, the 17th, at hopefully the Assembly, the LUSAC Library Conference Room here on the first floor. Otherwise, we may come into the chambers as available.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Ms. Johnston.
I'm in the process of trying to schedule an Enterprise Committee meeting on July 16th at 11:30 with MLMP. I'd like to have the MLMP board there to discuss some of the MLMP issues. And I would like to also comment for, I don't know, a number of years now, I've biked down for the 4th of July parade in Anchorage, and it's one of the it's a fantastic opportunity to see Anchorage come alive. It's a great parade, and rain, cold, it didn't make any difference. Anchorage is out and celebrating 4th of July. I have to say the park strip all summer long has been one great big celebration after another, and it really makes me very proud to be from Anchorage. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trainee.
Just, Mr. Chairman, I want to appreciate the administration for this new A version of AM 59 2013. It complies with the ordinance this body passed. It's a very nice document. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Chair? Just over here. Just
Yes,
a quick
Mr.
update. Ms. Gray Jackson inquired about the 17th. It is August 17th. It's put on by Bridge Builders. It's the annual dinner that they do, bringing in the many diverse cultures of Anchorage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Honeman, I have a question about the public safety meeting. Can you give us an update on what maybe you found out about the videotaping with AFD medical calls?
Yeah, in fact, a good question. Was assured that that practice was tested and currently not going on, not taking place, but that Dr. Levy, the medical director for the paramedic service for our Anchorage Fire Department, was still looking into whether or not it's valid. Apparently, there are some issues that need to be reviewed, but at this point, it wasn't something that they were going to proceed on, but maybe at a future date. I encouraged the chief of the fire department who was there and asked him to make sure that in advance of any changes such as that at that level, that he try to get concurrence with our body, that we had some concerns. So it's not, at this point, it's not going on.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnston.
Ms. Dembowski, do you have any Eagle River announcement or invite that you'd like to give?
Thank you, Ms. Johnston. If y'all haven't made a drive north, we do have Bear Claw coming up this week. We have lots of cotton candy, apples, and rides, not to mention slippery salmon race and all kinds of good stuff. So make the drive north to Eagle River and have some fun at Bear Claw.
And a great parade, by the way.
We do have a great parade, and I think I'll be in it.
Very good. Thank you. We are now at the item addendum to the agenda, which we do not have one this evening, but we do have two laid on the table. So I would like a motion to incorporate.
Move to incorporate.
Second.
Okay, any objection? Hearing none, I will read the two items into the minutes. The first item is 9F14. It is AR number 184. It's a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $400,000 from the Anchorage Bowls Parks and Recreation Service Area to Fund 161, fund balance to the Parks Recreation 2013 operating budget, Fund 161, to be used as a contribution and appropriating said contribution to the Anchorage Bowl Parks and Recreation Service Area Capital Improvement Projects Fund 461 to be used for pay for the replacement of the Manalizer Memorial Greenhouse boiler system. Our second item for laid on the table is 11A1. It is a AIM number 59A, and subject is executive appointments and compensation. That is the later on the table items, and I would now take a motion to pass for the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve, and I will begin with Mr. Trainee. Any items to be pulled, Mr. Trainee?
Thanks, sir. It's too nice to pull anything.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
No, thank you.
Mr. Horniman.
9A1, sir. 9A1.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Trombley.
9 Echo 2.
Mr. Flynn. Mr. Flynn. Mr. Steele.
Nothing at this time.
Ms. Dembowski.
No items, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Birch.
No items.
Okay. Once again, either Mr. Flynn or Mr. Starr, any items?
Nothing for me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. The chair shows that items pulled are items 9A1 and 9E2. With that, I would ask you to please vote on approving the consent agenda, less the two items that we have pulled. Mr. Flynn, your vote?
Mr. Flynn?
I think it's the 8-second delay. Okay. Show the vote, Madam Clerk. That motion passes with 9 showing 1 absent. And no vote for Mr. Flynn. Okay, we now have before us item 9A1.
Move to approve.
Second?
Okay, any objection? Hearing none. Ms. Johnston, are you reading? Oh, Ms. Gray Jackson, thank you.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and honoring Ross J. Plummer for his 36 years of service with the municipality of Anchorage. Whereas Ross J. Plummer began working for the municipality of Anchorage Police Department on January 17, 1977. And whereas in 1979, Ross received several gunshot wounds while responding to a call and confronting an armed subject. And whereas Ross became a founding member of the Special Weapons and Tactics Team and continued to serve in that capacity for 12 years. In addition, he became a certified forensic computer investigator and assisted in creating the first ever computer crimes unit at APD. And whereas Ross was promoted to sergeant as the initial K-9 SWAT supervisor in 1991, and during his tenure worked many high-profile cases while assigned to the following units: homicide, internal affairs, computer crimes, and East District Sergeant. Early in 2003, Ross was promoted to lieutenant, and in the latter part of the year was again promoted, this time to captain. Whereas in 2006, Ross, as captain of detectives, reinstituted the Vice Unit and was instrumental in developing the current violent crime strategy in reference to gang violence. Additionally, in 2006, Ross was promoted to deputy chief and revised the way the APD tracked and used overtime, resulting in a significant savings to the municipality. Since 2009, Ross has served the department in the capacity of both captain of patrol and detectives. And whereas Ross achieved a milestone when on January 17, 2013, he reached his 36th year of service to the municipality of Anchorage. Now and therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes and honors Ross J. Plummer for his achievement of 36 years of dedicated and continuing service to the Anchorage Police Department and the citizens of the municipality of Anchorage. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 9th day of July, 2013.
Ross is a man of few words, but I will say that he's a real institution, and the guy's watched my back for all the time I've been there, and I don't know what we're going to do without him, but thank you very much for the resolution.
Thank you, Chief Mew. Any other comments from Assembly? Mr. Horniman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say it was an honor and a pleasure to work with Captain Plummer, and although I never really directly worked for him, but I know that he had a great reputation amongst all the troops, the folks that served as one of his subordinates, and of course all the police staff, very well respected and going to be missed around the department. So 36 years in the police world, particularly as sworn officer, it's darn near 2 careers, so pretty notable for sure. So thank you, Captain Plummer, and good luck in retirement.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ross is back there, but anyway, I'm sure he can hear what we have to say. Anyway, I had opportunity to work with him on several occasions dealing with constituent issues, and he was always responsive, and I really appreciated that, and I am so grateful for your service to this community, Ross. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Ross, on behalf of the entire body, we truly appreciate what you've given to this community. We only wish you the very best in the future. Thank you very much. We now have before us item 9E2, AIM number 68, monthly investment report for the Assembly for May 2013. Mr. Trombley?
Move to accept.
Second.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr. Trombley?
Ms. Mahoney, when reviewing this, it looks like we're down $31 million in the total portfolio over the last month. And when I review the total portfolio return calendar year to date, we're also down. One of the other things I found interesting, and I was kind of hoping you could provide a little more clarification on this, is that the externally managed portfolio is down. One of the internally managed portfolios is also down, but the other restricted portfolios, which seem to be KeyBank, I don't know if that's local or how that's managed, but that seems to be up. We received recent news that part-time jobs are at an all-time high. We're at the longest stretch of unemployment at 7.5+%. I'm wondering, is this a trend that we're going to continue to see over the year? Is this going to affect our budget as we move forward? Is this something to be concerned about?
Well, I'm always concerned about our investment income because we use it to fund a portion of our operating budget. Right. But what has happened recently, as you know, is Ben Bernanke announced that he was going to cut back on the quantitative easing program. As a result, interest rates throughout the United States increased. And when interest rates increase, the value of our bond portfolio decreases. And so the loss that you saw in the month of May was largely due to that. But please, this is an unrealized loss, not a realized loss, meaning it's just a loss on the books and not a loss in cash. What we tend to do is we tend to hold these bonds to maturity, which means that at the end of the maturity of the bond, we will have the cash.
So since the quantitative easing process is going to be reduced or removed completely, is there a concern as far as the interest rates on the bonds that we are going to be selling? Are those going to be higher? Is our debt service going to go up more than we expected?
Well, interest rates have gone up. Granted, it's a small amount relative to how high it's been over, like, say, in 5 years prior to 2008. We would anticipate that if we issue bonds this year that the interest rates would be up slightly, but it's really difficult to predict. I have been talking with our financial advisor as well as some economists, and it's difficult to determine if this interest rate increase is just a blip and that it will go back down, or whether interest rates are on the rise.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mahoney.
Very good. No one else in the queue. Any objection to acceptance of the report? Seeing and hearing none, that report is accepted. That completes our consent agenda, and I would invite any of you that have been appointed to either a board or a commission to please come up and introduce yourselves and allow us to tell you how much we appreciate your willingness to serve. Anyone that was appointed to a board or a commission this evening? Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Pete Nolan, and I've been appointed to the Budget Advisory Commission. And I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to the mayor for appointing me, and thank you for the opportunity to serve in that position. I look forward to learning more about the budgeting process and how it all works, and working with this panel and the departments of the city. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, let me tell you how much we appreciate you, and we're looking for you to have our backs, okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. We now have before us item 11A. It is AIM 59. It's executive appointments and compensation. I need a motion.
Move to approve or accept.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The motion is already on the floor.
Oh, that's
right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it is. Any discussion on this item? Mr. Trainee.
Just to the administration, I appreciate, because the first version we got, the AIM 59 2013, just showed, for example, Brett getting $110,000. When we take a look at the A version, it's the total information we wanted. It now shows total compensation of $171,000. So that's what we're looking for. Just give me a breakdown for the executives. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate it.
Sure.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to thank the body for unanimously approving the ordinance to change the code so that we can get this information. And, I just want the public to know, and everybody in this room, that it's about transparency in government. And I'm really glad to see that the administration followed the new law on the books and presented a really valuable piece of information for us and also for the public to see. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue, any objection to approval of this? Seeing, hearing none, this item is approved. And we're at that time of the evening where we're going ahead and take a short dinner break. I can't move into the other items prior to 6 o'clock. So we will be back at 6 o'clock. The meeting, and I'll begin. Mr. Trini, you've got a little cleanup for me.
We have the whole body here, so we get the votes we need for it. Anyway, we got to do a little cleanup. What we need to do is reconsider our actions on 11A, AIM 59, 2013. That needs to be reconsidered because when we needed to have passed was 59, 2013A. It's the new one that's on here. We had a motion before, motion to approve, that's in the yellow packet, and we just took that one. That's the wrong one to approve.
Okay.
So if we get a motion to reconsider, if everybody would vote and get a second.
Second.
Vote to reconsider, appreciate it.
Okay. We have a motion for reconsideration on item 11A. Please vote. Mr. Starr? Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Flynn, are you there?
Okay. Mr. Flynn will rejoin us shortly.
I'm on, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. I apologize. Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Trainee?
Now we could move to accept AIM 59 2013A. That's the correct one. Deals with executive appointments and compensation.
Second.
Seeing no discussion, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Now, Mr. Chairman, one last thing. If I could get a motion to reconsider, if you'd entertain it, item 9E3, AIM 69 2013, sole source procurement report for the month of 2013. Looking at this, I should have pulled it and didn't. I'd like to discuss this for a few minutes. Towards the end of the meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Toward the end of the meeting?
In the meeting.
Okay,
Not
Mr.
time sensitive, sir.
Okay, Mr. Trainee. We are now to...
If we could get a motion, if we get the motion to reconsider, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, motion to reconsider. Please vote. If I can reset the screen.
Dick,
Who didn't? Me?
you got it. Second.
Can we have discussion on this motion? Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What's the purpose?
The purpose is I want to take an in-depth look at Owens Group LLC from the mayor's office for $25,000, given the fact we've got another ordinance later in the night that deals with sole source contracts,
Why don't you just ask the question?
because I want the ordinance to pass, and then we'll deal with this. Chris?
I can't reset.
I'm a no vote on reconsideration. Thank you.
Okay, we've got to get IT.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a retroactive report. This is a report of what has already happened for the month of May. And I guess I do not see the merits of kicking this down the road, since it's a look backwards in time, and it would not be affected by whatever would pass later. So unless there's a specific question, I looked at this and didn't see anything that was confusing or rose to the point of having to ask a question. So again, it will be a no vote.
Okay, we have a motion for reconsideration before us, the first and the second. On that, Mr. Trainee, explain your item one more time. Mr. Starr and Mr. Flynn.
I'd simply like us to reconsider our actions accepting this item, and then if you don't want to vote to accept it, fine, I intend to be a no vote to accept it. But I do want to reconsider it. I've got some issues with how some of the money was spent.
Okay, please vote. Mr. Starr?
No.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries 6-5. We will carry that to the end of the agenda, Mr. Trainee. We now have before us assembly appearance request. Mr. Ron Oliva.
Good evening, Mayor, staff, and Assembly members. My name is Ron Oliva. My request tonight to appear is to request a works session on, well, two things. One, a tax exempt status for my properties adjacent to what is considered a negative impact by the appraisal department of the municipality and has negatively affected my properties. And the second thing is to, at this work session, to aggressively seek out the municipality and especially ML&P to purchase the last remaining fee simple property remaining on that block. Last year I appeared and asked for this exemption, and I don't think I had the concrete evidence to really show why my property should be exempted. And as you know, I've done everything that a citizen is supposed to do as far as appearing, letters, emails, protests, even the lawsuit which ended up in a financial settlement to me. I offered to give back, but no one stepped forward. Since all that has transpired, things have only gotten worse. The shelter and beans and whatever their clients are, they are protected by a holy moral veil that I don't think a veteran of winning the Medal of Honor could even touch. So nothing is being done to mitigate the negative impacts to the entire neighborhood. And it's not only the adjacent property, but it affects even the church that's up the street. The president of the Fairview Community Council, S.J. Klein, has called it an economic dead zone. I don't think I should be required to pay any taxes if I could carry it a step further, I wish you would pay me to remain there, but that's a little bit of humor, very little. But I think even you're surprised at the good intentions that have gone somewhere else. Surely not the crown jewel anymore, as Catholic Social Services pointed out to Fairview, because they lime almost daily the fecal material that surrounds that facility. So what I'm requiring is, let's come up with a solution. It would be wonderful for the tax exemption because it would work the opposite of revitalization. And I did give a little handout there that the assessor does have a code. It's only been used once in 17 years that would give an exemption similar to the Marlowe McKay building. You revitalize it. What, through changes in municipal law, you basically deteriorated the neighborhood. So I feel it should work in the opposite direction as well. I know Mr. Posey, the manager, we had cursory discussions on the need that they may have, and they are presently one of my tenants, so I would be more than happy to enter into negotiations and sell those properties.
Mr. Leva, I need you to conclude.
Oh, in summary, I would be very aggressive with this, only because the settlement went to retaining a more powerful attorney than myself in this matter, and I don't want to hover over threats of litigation, but also I realize that in summary, if we can work this out, buy me out, hey, I'm not asking for anything special. I just want to resolve the issue that's not aggressively being addressed, and I don't think ever will be. So the easiest way out is exempt my taxes or buy my property, and hey, I won't have to show up here anymore.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Ms. Dembowski?
Mr. Oliva, is your contact information in this packet that you just handed us?
Part of it is, the most important part is the reason for the value change in my assessments has been adjusted for the negative stigma for being adjacent to the Brother Francis Shelter and Beans Cafe. Also in the packet is the lawsuit which went to mediation, which led to a financial settlement. And I just want to mention one comical thing. The judge, Elaine Andrews, been on the bench 21 years, took a tour. And unfortunately, she stepped in a pile of puke, and hey, welcome to my world, Your Honor. And thus the settlement, but it wasn't about the money, solved the problem.
I guess my question, though, is what's the easiest way to contact you? Can somebody just drive in, or
sure.
call you?
And I'd like to thank Mr. Starr, if he's listening, because he did come down and taken 2 tours, and what he witnessed was beyond an eyeful. So I think he suggested the work session, and I appear and request it. So if we can all get on the same page, and if you would break out your checkbook, I'll be out of here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oliva. There are no other questions.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Mr. Hall?
Yes, sir.
It's early in the evening.
I know. Thank you very much.
Good night. Thank you for listening. I look forward to the work session.
We now have before us item 13A, AO number 51, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 3.30.174, governing executive compensation to update pay ranges, include reporting timelines and information, and provide for limitations. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jacqueline Hofflick. I'm the Human Resources Director for the Titlit Corporation and also the Chairperson for the Human Resource Advisory Board for the municipality. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. Related to this proposed ordinance, I just wanted to refer back to a document that the Human Resource Advisory Board provided the municipality, the Assembly, on June 4th, outlining some certain ideas that we had that we thought were very salient to this whole rewriting the municipal ordinance here. Primarily, in reading what has been presented by Assemblyman Traney and others, there's a couple of items that we have got real concern about, and I'm speaking on behalf of everyone for the board. And the board members, you have to understand, are certified professionals in human resources. We do this for a living. We've done comp plans. We know somewhat what works and what doesn't. We also know what is our professional standards for our industry. And one of the big things that is lacking is a foundation on the actual amounts for the salary ranges as far as a verifiable foundation of research, and that would be a salary survey. And this is something that industries do all the time, and it's to make sure that you are comparing like jobs to like jobs. Just because they have similar job titles does not mean they're similar jobs. And we want to make sure that the municipality remains a competitive employer. The municipal's as far as we're concerned, the most valuable asset the municipality has is its employees. If you're going to remain competitive and be able to retain very good talent to be able to run the municipality in an efficient way, and which equals economic way, hopefully, you need to make sure you're competitive in your in Anchorage. You're hiring against other people out there. And unless you do the salary survey, you don't know whether you're competitive or not, because the salary survey matches what other employers are paying. They're not cheap, don't get me wrong, but they are well worth the money. Well worth the money. If that salary survey would be done and you could update the salary ranges based on salary survey information, I think you would be years ahead, because you will end up doing this again. If you don't set the foundation now, you will have to repeat this process in the future. I can guarantee it. Setting in, salary range increases based on things like CPU is okay, but it doesn't take into consideration new legislation that we're going to have to start covering that has huge economic impact. Salary surveys do that. They really do. Also, I would like to recommend on behalf of the board as well, there be a section, and there's specifically a section in the ordinance itself saying that there are no bonuses allowed for executive pay. And I think this is a huge error. You have people that are bumping up against the very top end of a salary range, and there is absolutely no way for them to have any type of financial incentive for doing a good job. And doing a good job means working efficiently and carrying out the business of the municipality. And that is extremely important. So I would like to really urge consideration of allowing a lump sum bonus that would not add to the base rate pay, but a bonus strictly. Okay? I thank you for your time. If you have any questions for me, please.
Yes, we do have. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Trombley.
Thanks for coming down and thanks for the work you do on the commission. One of the interesting things that Mr. Traney and I discovered as we talked earlier today is that the numbers that you see on here, the underlined versions, the new ones that if this passed would be the new baselines, is that those numbers are actually provided to Mr. Traney. I don't want to speak for Mr. Traney, but they were provided to Mr. Traney by the Employee Relations Department. So those are what's currently being used. Now, I have more questions for the administration later on as far as if code says $27,000 a year, why is it that ER is basing everything off of $37,000 a year? So these are the ones that are currently being used. Are you suggesting that we do a salary study for the municipality for every executive, or I'm a little bit confused because this is what's already being used. At some point in time, somebody set this, whether it's arbitrary or not, I don't know.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is that I think that the way it was set to begin with had no salary survey basis to it. So it was, I don't know exactly where the dollar amounts came from originally, way back when. I don't know that.
Okay,
but I will say that if we had non-representative and executive positions have salary surveys done for those individuals, you'd be miles ahead.
Okay, so let's assume that that salary survey had been done and that the base was, I don't know, $42,000 for 20N and 20E. And that was what was in there. Would the commission support this or not?
I would say that and again, if you have a salary survey, and it's an industry kind of a standard rule, every couple of years you resurvey to make sure you're maintaining your ability to be.
But if the survey had been done and these numbers were, say, accurate to a salary survey, would the commission support this ordinance or would they not support it?
Not in whole. I would support, what you've got there for your salary ranges. There's a couple of problems I've got with salary ranges being in a printed document. They're out of date by the time they go to print, usually, because of a lot of different things. So it's kind of, to me, I wouldn't do it if this was my business. I wouldn't do it. I'd call it a salary range, whatever, E5 or whatever, and that would be good enough. And then you would have another document that it would actually be a living document that could, expand or contract as you need to with your salary survey data.
You disagree with this in spirit?
No, I don't disagree with it in spirit at all.
You agree with it in spirit?
I do, but I just don't think that it's that the execution of it is done in the most appropriate way.
Okay, and that's the feeling of the commission, is that in spirit the body agrees with it, but with minor changes.
With that, and also the changes to
the bonus aspect.
I'm sorry?
The bonus aspect that you mentioned?
The bonus as well. There are a few other tweaks that we'd love to see, perfect world, but those are the big ones.
Okay.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for being here this evening and also reviewing our ordinance. And I just want to preface my question with the fact that, I have a high level of respect for all of our employees, including our executives. But are you familiar with AO 37, the labor ordinance?
The labor ordinance? No,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I don't.
So then if you're not familiar, then I guess you weren't here to testify on that ordinance.
No.
No, and I really wish that you were, because a lot of what you're saying in terms of competitiveness and some other issues that you bring up applies also to our other employees who have rules and regulations now that it's going to be really, really hard to attract people, as you mentioned, qualified folks. But thank you again for being here this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you for coming tonight and giving us some of your knowledge. There was a time when people worked for the government because it was a source of pride to serve the public. And with that in mind, what consideration does the HR field take when it comes to comparing public service, working for the city, versus private sector? Are we in a time now where they should always be equal, or is there a sacrifice one should make in order to serve the public? I mean, is that a consideration?
It would be really nice to be able to say it is a consideration, but you've got to feed the bulldog. You've got to make a living, and you have to weigh your quality of life, what you're willing to give up. And when you can get a similar type of job for better benefits and more pay, why wouldn't you?
Well, hopefully because of service.
That's true. It would be very nice to say that, but the reality of the situation is that a lot of people don't have that luxury.
Sure.
Truly.
So
but I wish they would.
There's not a standard where that is actually built into a formula.
It's not really a factor. I mean, when they do salary surveys, too, you have to understand that they will compare like industries, or you will be compared to possibly other governmental, units around within this whole state even. You may have to expand your hiring area to statewide or whatever. And they will look at that.
Okay.
They do, because they'll take, excuse me for interrupting, nonprofits are compared to nonprofits. It's very hard to compare a nonprofit to Exxon or BP.
You helped me in that, because that's one of the things that I'm thinking is, wouldn't it be, if we're going to do a salary survey, it would make sense to compare us against maybe the North Star Borough or the Mountain View Borough, or not necessarily the city against BP.
Well, but you've got to realize where the majority of your hiring takes place is within the municipality of Anchorage. So you have to look at who your real competitors are. And when I was working for the Anchorage Museum, nonprofit, we had to compete against the municipality, we had to compete against the state, we had to compete against everybody. We looked at everybody's stuff.
Sure.
We had to.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Mr. Horniman.
Thank you. Right here, ma'am.
Where am I looking? Oh, there, I'm sorry, I
Don't
didn't
worry.
see you last
Thank-
time, too.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I look forward to hearing more. Looks like we may be scheduling a work session on this. We look
Oh,
forward to
good.
hearing some information about that for the future. Fair to say that a good percentage of municipal jobs are unique. For instance, I think you were just addressing police officers, structural or bridge engineers, not necessarily, I guess if you were looking at it from a cross perspective there, is it pretty fair to say it's unique in that regard?
There's a lot of uniqueness, but there's a lot of that transcend. There's a lot of clerical, there's the whole HR department, benefits administration, all of that. Those transcend to other industries, certainly.
And I suppose I'll address this to Ms. Fegley as well, but I would hope that the commission would perhaps review and look or help assist our ER and HR sections here in the municipality, because I know that not only are there, it was even addressed during AO 37, it was job description, position classification, including, I'm sure, salary surveys and studies across the board. They're just not being kept up. And it's something that I don't know how we can address that other than, I hate to say it, but we may have to hire more people to get that done. I mean, may just be the bottom line. But I would just challenge perhaps the commission to look at that, the board to look and see.
And we do offer our expertise as much as we possibly can in that, a lot of times we'll be asked, how do you all do it?
Right.
Who have you used? What have you found really works, really doesn't work? And oftentimes it's us being able to tell you what really didn't work well is a real help.
Well, I don't know if you're the chair. I don't know if I go through our chair or through the administration or whatever jointly. I'll make the official request if you can assist, because I know that was something that was addressed. We were questioning concerns about some changes in the labor ordinance. And so it was already addressed. There was some concerns if the commission the board could look to see how we're doing it and maybe some suggestions on how we should proceed. I'd appreciate that.
I think there is something about the way that the board is designed is that we could not be involved in that.
No, just
in the
review.
development of it.
A review
of
with a recommendation.
it? Okay.
Yeah, review and recommendation.
Okay.
I would make that request.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you. Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all?
My name is Daryl Lanzon. Fluoride-free water. I know someone, Miss Elby Gray Jackson, actually mentioned Prop 37. I am proudly one of 3 people that spoke in favor of Prop 37. I could thank the mayor for that. And I'm going to speak against this amendment or this ordinance. There's a couple things that I just kind of popped in my head. It seems like this is a kickback of sorts to the unions that Mr. Trainee and Mr. Honeman happen to favor, and I don't agree with that. That's why I spoke in favor of Prop 37. I would like to point out that there are 232 people, Anchorage City employees, that make more money than Mayor Sullivan does. I would also like to let you know that those employees happen to exclusively be union employees. Again, this is a kickback to unions. That's all this is to me. Nothing less, nothing more. I would like to also point out the fact that all of the executives, as many hours as they may or may not work, do not get overtime. They have a set salary. That's what they make, regardless of how much time they have to put in here or elsewhere. And these are issues that I think need to be considered when voting on this ordinance. I would like to encourage you to vote against this ordinance and not give the unions a kickback.
Thank you. Mr. Horniman?
Yeah, I'd like to clear this matter up if possible. I've heard this before, and I'm not sure that it's accurate. So no offense, Mr. Lanzon, but can someone from the administration, Ms. Fegley or someone, address how many employees municipal-wise, straight salary, not required extra earnings, or straight salary and benefits, how many employees in the municipality make more than the mayor? Does anybody have that answer? Straight salary, hourly rate with benefits.
Through the chair, I don't have that information handy. I can get back that information if you'd
I can
like.
provide that information in a matter of minutes by walking back there and
I'm
pulling
talking
up.
straight salary, Mr. Lanz. I don't think you have that information.
Well, I do have it based on overtime, and that's
No,
what
what I'm
understand
saying, sir, is
exactly what you're
that's
saying,
different.
sir, through the
That's
chair.
different. That's apples and oranges. No, I'm not
it's
here to
not.
debate, argue. I just asked the question to the administration.
It's
I'd
not.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
It's not, and,
There-
and it's still my time, right?
No, sir, your time.
The light hasn't changed.
Oh, well, I thought you'd concluded your testimony.
Well, he actually spoke during my testimony, and the bottom line is if you work overtime, you're still taking home that money. If you don't work overtime, then that's your straight salary, and that's the money you're taking home. If you work it, you're getting paid for it, that counts. At the end of the year, when you pay taxes, then you don't pay taxes based on your regular time. You pay taxes based on your overtime as well. So that's what is really comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. And I can provide the 232 people in a document that I have on my computer in a matter of minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, items before the body.
Mr. Chairman, what I want to do is continue the public hearing until the 6th of August, and that'll give us time to have a work session on it.
Second.
Very, very well, Mr. Trini. The
We're
6th
going
of
to
August.
have our attorney there, Julia.
Very well.
Work session. I'll leave it up to you, Mr. Chairman, as when you're going to have it.
We will schedule it for the 6th. That is a regular work session day for us. Let's see. The clerk confirmed that. Is the 6th?
Chairman? 6th meeting day would have to be the Friday before that.
The second, Mr. Trini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. And we will confirm that Mr. Tucker can be in attendance.
Have we concluded the public testimony?
We have.
Okay. Thank you.
It's going to be continued.
Yes. The action will be continued, but the testimony was closed.
Thank you. I just
Yes.
wanted to assure that we have concluded the public testimony.
Yes.
Okay. Just for clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Trombley?
Well, I'll just say now, something else as well, but Mr. Traney actually moved to continue public testimony after we have a work session.
That's correct.
And then
Okay.
Mr. Honeman seconded that.
That's what I moved, and that's what we approved.
Okay. I didn't hear you say that, Mr.
All right.
Trini.
Sorry, I'll speak up louder.
And then if I,
Very well. Thank you.
and then, Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask Ms. Fegley a couple questions. So this is addressed at the work session. One of them is we have an ordinance, current law, that has maximums and minimums in them. From the ER department, those have been changed without coming to the assembly, and I'm curious, why are those changed? Who changed them? And what's the process involved, since city code says that there's supposed to be a minimum and a maximum, which is operated on differently? You have to provide those now, but I would like something from the administration to explain to us how those got changed. But thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Birch?
Well, I did understand it was a continued public hearing. I think we've kicked this can down the road far enough. I'm a no vote on continuing the public hearing. I mean, we've had a public hearing tonight. We had a couple folks show up. And I think that, this has been adequately aired and discussed, and I will be a no vote on continuing this. Thank you.
Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to Mr. Trombley's question, one of the things the Assembly should look at, and it's in the ordinance in front of you, is at page 4, line 35, it's subsection I. There's a required adjustment to the minimum and maximum base rates so that every time the non-representative pay plan is adjusted, the executive ranges are adjusted. So in theory, subsection C, which shows the dollar amounts, should be updated as well, but there's a mandate in subsection I that the rates be changed. That's why the rates are changed.
Well, thank you, through the Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wheeler, which is all more reason to have a work session, because apparently not all of us understand that, and it kind of begs the question as to why would we even have minimums and maximums if they're going to be changed. It seems to conflict. But I don't want to get into a debate right now, but I think it'd be a good opportunity, the reason why we should have a work session on it.
Okay. What I'm going to do is have you vote. Mr. Traney made a motion to continue public testimony on this at our next meeting, and so please vote on Mr. Traney's motion. What?
It was our meeting for August the 6th, Mr. Chairman. Wasn't our next meeting, Ernie?
Yeah, yes. Yes, I know, August 6th. Yeah.
With the work session before that.
With a
right?
work session before that. Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please vote.
Yes.
Mr. Flynn.
Yes.
Okay. That motion passes 10-1. We now have before us item 14A, AO number 74, an ordinance amending the zoning map and approving the rezoning of approximately 4.09 acres from PLI lands to district to B3, general business with special limitations district of a portion of lot 10, southwest 1/4, northeast 1/4, southeast 1/4 of section 30, TI3N, R3W, SM Alaska, generally located on the north side of East 40th Avenue and the east side of Denali Street. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14B, AR number 137, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage amending section 21.40.001 of the Anchorage Municipal Code of Regulations to allow a health care facility with 1 through 16 persons as conditional use in the R2M district. The item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14C, AR number 165, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use for a beverage dispensary use and license number 4848 in the B2B Central Business Intermediate District for the Hot Quarter Grill Incorporated doing business as the Hot Quarter Grill at 525 West 4th Avenue with an original subdivision, Block 26, Lot 9A, generally located south of West 3rd Avenue, west of E Street, north of West 4th Avenue, and east of F Street in Anchorage. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to congratulate Lynn and her husband Alex for bringing Oat Quarter Grill to Anchorage. Their restaurant is in Eagle River. It's an Oat Quarter Grill in Eagle River, and I don't like driving to Eagle River to get some really, really good food. So I'm real excited about this, and congratulations, and I look forward to eating there soon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Dembowski.
Well, I have to say, those of us in Eagle River are very, very sad to see the Hot Quarter Grill moving to Anchorage, but it is well worth the drive. So, though you might be changing neighborhoods, we still love you, and we will definitely make the drive.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of want to echo the sentiments of the previous two speakers. I do appreciate our friends in Eagle River donating this outstanding business to downtown. But I'd also like to take a moment to thank the ownership of Hope Quarter Grill, and this actually also applies to a couple of other ones we had tonight, I think Tequila Grill and so on, for taking the time to meet with the Anchorage Downtown Partnership and answer questions and resolve a lot of concerns so that this motion should pass very easily tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. And the chair would like to have reflected in the minutes that I will be a yes vote, seeing as how Mr. Starr has extended the invitation to my wife and I to have dinner with he and his wife on opening night, and he's picking up the check. With that, please vote. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Regretfully, yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14D, AR number 166, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use for a beverage dispensary use and license number 826 in the B2B district of the Tequila Kitchen, LLA, doing business as Tequila Kitchen at 445 West 4th Avenue within original townsite subdivision block 24A, lot 2B, generally located south of West 3rd Avenue, east of E Street, and north of West 4th Avenue in Anchorage. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Good evening.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'm Jim Letts, co-owner of Tequila Kitchen. I'm here with Josh Picasso. He's the owner and operator of Serrano's Mexican Grill in town as well. So we have a new endeavor we're trying to bring down to downtown Anchorage, kind of an upscale Mexican restaurant, kind of an Alaskan flair to it. So of course we have a full liquor license we're trying to pass. Has a small lounge area and a bar, as long as a restaurant area. The lounge and bar are about a quarter of the size of the restaurant. We're mostly the restaurant type, but we have to go through the proceeds here to get to that level. So I don't know what the board wants to hear. I'm here to answer any questions.
I see no questions. I take that back. Mr. Trombley.
When do you plan on opening? Right here.
There you are. Oh, boy. It's been an interesting progress. I'm shooting for mid-September.
All right.
Somewhere around there.
Right
We're kind of in the beginning of the construction phase.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn? Mr. Flynn?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14E, AR number 167, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use for a club use and license number 5236 in the I-1 district for the Anchorage Elks Lodge 2868 at 3101 Penland Parkway within Penland Park Subdivision, Track D10, Fragment Lot 2, generally located south of the Glen Highway, west of Rodeo Place, north of Penland Park, and east of Airport Heights Drive in Anchorage. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? I was curious who the red shirts belong to.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Lambert. I am the third-year trustee of the Anchorage Elks Lodge. I'm here tonight to ask you to approve the alcohol and beverage permit for the Anchorage Elks. The Anchorage Elks is a fraternal organization that acts as a community center, and there are, I believe, 6 or 7 other Elks Lodges across Alaska and over 2,600 across the United States. Any questions?
Mr. Honeman.
Yes, I just wanted to say, in general, I'm fairly supportive of your petition. Just wanted to make sure you're aware of a club use license is different than an actual public restaurant open to just anybody walking in. So you're aware of those restrictions?
Yes, absolutely. In my professional career, we work with restaurants and bars across Alaska, and specifically with nonprofit organizations acting as fraternals. So myself and several other people here tonight have worked with over 40 fraternal organizations over the last 18 years. And so we're very familiar with the rules involving statutes and bylaws in the Anchorage municipality.
Well, the one that's recently on our mind, I'm
Yes.
sure the body shares with me, is we had a club licensee who, or license holder who felt that their establishment was more to be run like a regular bar, and it is different. There are some differences, and you're clear that you're not like someone just can't amble in. They have to be a club member or invited as a guest of the club member. They have to be signed in, and only the club member can purchase.
Yes, absolutely. And the organization actually in question, that was their main downfall. It's not that there's a problem inherent with private clubs. It is that that particular instance, a private club chose to act as a public organization, which is not what a private club is. We are fully aware of the requirements to have only members within our organization allowed in and able to do business.
And I just wanted to, I meant to also give both the same, I mean, it's not necessarily selecting and singling you out. Yours is a little unique compared to the previous two licenses we just heard. But, you know, we in the municipal government, I know that we're all interested in having good operators who will make sure that you're running a good establishment following all the conditions and the laws and sort of.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate that and generally supportive of it, and I look forward to maybe stopping in as a guest someday. And
we'd love to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Trading.
Sir, over here. Question for you. Did you go to the community council meeting? Because I see there was no response from the community council. Did you happen to go to their meeting?
I did not personally attend.
Did somebody from the Elks attend? Okay.
None that I'm aware of.
Do me a favor then. I'm
Yes.
still going to agree to this, but would you please go to a community council meeting and let the neighbors know you're there? So if we have any problems, it's going to end up coming from the community council. I'd much rather you guys get involved in the ball before it starts to roll over you.
Absolutely.
So we found with the other two ones.
Will do.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Steele.
Yes, sir. The hours of operation kind of confused me. Is do they have access via the rear of the facility, the mall, to get in after hours or to come and go after hours, after the mall's closed?
Yes. So where the organization will be positioned within the mall, it has its own separate parking and rear access for after mall hours.
Good. That was something that wasn't clear to me, but that makes sense. So.
Mr. Trombley.
We had it was American Legion or the vets that came before us, and fortunately you're surrounded by commercials, so you don't have that. You're not butted up against residential, which can cause some problems. But reading through your packet, I did have a chance to read your lease agreement, and on section 19, this is what it's under the waste and quiet conduct, and one of the parts in there says the tenant shall not commit or suffer to be committed any waste upon the said premise or any public or private nuisances or any other act or thing which may disturb the quiet enjoyment of any other tenant. What do you plan your hours to be as far as serving alcohol, meeting your lease agreement, garbage, as we've seen some other people come before us for relooking at their conditional use permit? Have all those things been addressed? Have you communicated with your neighbors that this is what's going to be going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll address those one at a time. Garbage, we have a dedicated dumpster right outside the rear entrance, and so as long as we have weekly pickup, disturbing or getting rid of refuse should not be a problem. As far as not creating too much noise to disturb the other ones in the mall, the way our location is adjacent to the mall, we don't actually share very many walls where our actual bar and then also any music or loud noises would be in reference to the rest of the mall. And the mall closes at 9 o'clock, so any bands or loud music would be after mall hours.
And I'm glad to hear that, because one of the things that I don't want to have come back before us is other tenants in the Northland Mall yelling at us as to why we approve this when it's causing problems with the other tenants and affecting customers and property values.
Yes, absolutely. And just to follow that up, Mal, the mall manager, is, in fact, I believe we are initiating him as a member of the Elks Lodge this month, and he is been nothing but supportive of us this far, and we have a tremendous working relationship with him. So should there be a problem going forward, I'm sure it could be resolved easily.
Well, he's a big guy, so if you need security, I'm sure he can take care of it himself. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Starr.
in the applicant's application, I guess the hours of operation lists from 8 a.m. till midnight, and they also indicate sales. My question is, if I propose an amendment to limit the sales to cease at midnight, would the petitioner have any problems with that?
I would ask that sales not be limited to midnight, simply stating that for special events or any reason that we may want to stay later, we may want to sell alcohol after midnight. And as the mall would close, that would not interfere with any of the other tenants in the mall.
Did you hear that, Mr. Starr?
I did. So that begs the question then, are you leasing your facilities out to other operators that will come in and host parties at your facility?
Not at this time, though we may not completely take that off the table moving forward. But if we were going to personally have an event, as an example, we had a 4th of July event for members. If for any reason we wanted to take that later into the night, we would request to not have that limitation.
What's wrong with requesting an exemption for those evenings that you want to go past midnight?
Off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure what that would involve, though as I'm sure you know, there's plenty of planning that goes into any one event, and that would simply be one more step that I feel is unnecessary in this case.
So your application, you listed from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Were your intentions to do that, or have they recently changed since somebody's found out that you're doing a club license?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Could you repeat that, Mr. Starr?
You indicate only a 12 a.m. close now on your application.
He said you indicated 12 a.m. close now on your application.
Yes, that is the plan as of this time.
Go back to my initial question. If I proposed an amendment to your operation that is dispensing at 12 midnight, would you have trouble with that?
I request that that amendment would not be passed, as I don't foresee a particular instance where we would need to be open past midnight, but I don't see any advantage to placing that particular restriction on us at this time.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Johnston?
Over here. That's right.
Oh, okay.
Do you intend to have any events that are non-member oriented, like weddings or outside member events?
At this time, we don't have any set plans to do something like that, though it is a very large space, and we have certainly discussed the possibility of renting space out for events such as weddings, things. But those events would simply be renting the space. They would not be able to utilize our liquor license or any of our beverages. They would have to secure a separate catering permit, and they would simply just be renting a set location. And we would, of course, take into account mall hours so that any noise would not be in interference with other tenants in the mall.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just let me close with you by saying I'm pleased to see the Elks being resurrected. At one time, you were a very dominant presence in this community, and I know that I've seen it go into a slide, but it's great to see that you're coming back and appear to have a pretty strong organization put together. So keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Flynn.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I tried to step in earlier. I just want to be clear. So our application that in the packet says they're going to conclude service at midnight, and the applicant is saying now that they don't want that restriction in their conditional use permit. Is that correct?
You understand Mr. Flynn's question? Your application shows that you're going to cease operation or selling alcohol beverage at midnight.
Yes.
And he's asking why there's an issue if that is put on as a restriction.
So I have been in the bar and restaurant industry for 18 years. This is not my first time before an assembly. And in that time, I've never heard of that restriction of placing a time restriction that just because an organization may close a set hours of, say, 10 o'clock, that there would be a restriction on their liquor license that they could never be open later than that. So while we do not plan on being opening later than midnight at this time, I do not see a net benefit to placing that restriction on us.
Mr. Flynn, you want to reply to that?
Well, I'll just explain for the applicant's information. We have really struggled of late with, we'll call them club licenses, in that the operators have varying levels of sophistication and have found themselves running afoul of their neighbors. And so I'm inclined to support Mr. Starr's idea that the conditional use permit should reflect the application. And I'm also would like to echo Mr. Trainey's remarks. I mean, somebody should have gone to the Mountain View Community Council prior to this coming to us and reached out to them, and that did not happen. So I have some concerns about this one, just because while this gentleman specifically apparently has restaurant and bar experience, I sincerely doubt that the totality of the Elks Club does. So that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flynn. We have no other questions.
Okay. Well, do you mind if I address his comments for just a moment? In my professional career, as I said before, I have worked with nonprofits all across the state, and specifically fraternal nonprofits, whether that be American Legions or VFWs or Elks Lodges or Moose Lodges. There is, off the top of my head, almost 20 fraternal clubs just within the Anchorage municipality, whether they be VFWs or American Legions or Moose Lodges. And 99% of them operate with no problems to their neighbors or to the community. In fact, in many cases, I would argue to say that they are of a net benefit. And that is what we aim to be. And while we do have a beverage license and there is a bar and restaurant component, at the end of the day, we really are a community center. And that is what we're striving to be. That is the goal of an Elks Lodge. And I do not see a net benefit to restricting our activities to midnight, even though those are our set hours, especially since the mall will be long since closed and there's no danger, no surrounding residential area of disturbing those around us. Our back is up against the Glen Highway. So,
Mr. Horniman?
For the members of the body, I actually brought the application process that showed that it would not serve alcohol past midnight. And the only concern, if you want to just share with us your concern of putting it in the conditional use, what was your concern about that?
My concern I just discussed with him, I'm not familiar enough with the process where if there was a reason why we wanted to, say, sell alcohol until 1 a.m., where 4th of July celebration or some large event where we wanted to sell it longer, I'm not aware of the procedure for gaining approval to do so. Is another major objection to that proposed regulation.
Ms. Dembowski?
I'm over here.
Oh, hi there.
So, just off the top of my head, what I'm thinking is what your thought was, this was obviously no oversight, putting 12 a.m. on here. You were thinking you would be in compliance with city law as to when you had to stop serving alcohol. Is that
Yes.
correct? Would you foresee this application where it says stop serving alcohol to be at 12 a.m., would that be a problem on, say, New Year's Eve?
That would be a problem on, say, New Year's Eve.
All right.
Or Christmas or any other time when you might have a large group of people who wanted to stay late into the night.
So as the applicant, what your organization is asking for is basically to be able to serve alcohol pursuant to city code.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else to testify? Anyone at all? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Alan Abbott. I'm a resident of Anchorage. I'm a proud elk for 24 years. I was involved in the search for the location over 2 years looking for a suitable site where there was sufficient parking, where there weren't neighbors that could be bothered. Many sites were turned down just because of what's happening in other parts of the town. That addresses one concern. For those of you that don't know what Elks are, we're professional do-gooders. We raise money to give it away. That's what we do. If you want to raise $2, you sell cookies like the Girl Scouts. If you want to raise thousands of dollars, you bring together adults with big wallets in adult situations where they can have a glass of wine, and you bring in big money. Last year, Elks in the state of Alaska contributed $57,000 to One Elk Foundation. In return, that foundation gave the state of Alaska Elks $75,000 to disperse to the community. Force multiplication. That money went to the American Red Cross in Anchorage. Went to Kids Kitchen. I'm forgetting. Fisher House got some money. Scholarships. That's where the money goes. But you have to bring adults together in adult situations to be able to get that kind of money. I would ask that you allow the Elks to continue to do their work, to be able to bring adults together in adult situations, to be able to do the public service that you talked about. Thank you for recognizing public service. And let them move forward and do the good things. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, the item is before the body for action.
Point
Move
of
to
personal
approve.
privilege for disclosure.
You and Elk, too.
I'm everything.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I am not a member of this Elks Club, but my husband is a member of the Eagle River Elks Club, and as such, I do have a spouse's card to an Elks Club. So I just wanted to, by way of disclosure, put that before you.
Well, my response to that is under 1.15.035. You are disclosing a private interest of a type generally possessed by a large group and not specific to this club. You have no financial interest. I see no conflict and trust you to vote the public interest. Does the body agree?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are welcome.
I'll move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve. Mr. Trombley.
Ms. Tucker or Mr. Wheeler, the question I have is what their application says is they'll close at midnight. If they do end up leasing their space out to a wedding, say, and that individual gets a temporary permit to allow them to serve and consume alcohol on that premises, are they bound by that midnight time frame, or can they actually go? Is there a limit that the individual is renting the spot out, the location out has an extended hours, or are they bound by the midnight time frame?
Through the chair, Mr. Trombley, the application asks what will the normal business hours of operation be. It doesn't preclude a one-off or the occasional longer hours of operation. The second part of the question with respect to alcohol itself says that alcohol beverages will be sold or dispensed between noon and 12 a.m. I'm not aware of a situation where the ABC board imposes that as a condition on the license. It's just a part of the information they want to analyze the application, but I don't think that the ABC board takes that and imposes it as a condition on the license. because they would simply follow the state statute, which allows the longer operating hours or the local code, which in this case is the 3 a.m. one that you're familiar with.
So in layman's terms, if I decided to get, well, I'm already married, but if I was getting married again and I wanted to rent out the space, I could actually consume alcohol on the premise past that midnight time frame.
That would be part of the condition of whatever permit
Okay.
that you'd be under. So if it's a caterer's
Understood.
permit and there's some limitation, that we would look to that permit.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Trini?
And Mr. Chairman, when you're ready.
Yes,
Flynn?
Mr. Flynn.
This is to you. You're the assembly member that represents that area. Want to hear if you have any ideas on this, Mr. Flynn.
Mr.
Mr.
Flynn.
Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Flynn?
If I may,
You may.
I'd like to move an amendment. I've emailed the text to the clerk. On page 2, line 6,
Yes.
following the word week, I would like to insert from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m.
Second.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes, you may,
it may be
Mr.
that after as, we need to insert the word otherwise, but I will leave that to the clerk for a cleanup.
Okay, thank you. So we have got an amendment on the floor by Mr. Flynn, seconded by Mr. Traney. Now, do I have anyone that has discussion on the amendment? Ms. Dembowski.
I would like to, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to
I think
call
Mr.
the
Starr's also.
body's attention to the first page of the resolution, section 2, number 2. And if you'll indulge me in just a moment, I'll read it for the audience. All uses shall conform to the plans and narratives submitted with this conditional use application, except that the licensee may change the hours of operation listed on the application in accordance with all applicable laws without having to modify the conditional use. I mean, right there it says that they can change their hours.
Right.
So
And
I don't know that Mr. Flynn's.
Mr. Flynn has actually
We'll
made...
have to come back and revisit that, presuming the amendment passes.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, I'll be in.
Yes, Mr. Starr.
Well, I don't mind the hours of operation going as late as they want to operate. I think it's the sale and consumption of alcohol that concerns me. So, duly noted on Section 2 that the operational hours of live entertainment and all the other things, but I think the maker of the motion, what's on the floor right now, is that we pull the alcohol out of the mix, and we do that at midnight, as they initially intended their business model to do. I'm going to support the amendment as moved because I think it is the right thing to do from a club perspective. We're starting to see a newly created and competitive aspect to the liquor dispensaries in this community, and I'm very cautious of what the history of those has been. Very few have been successful. I also note that they put on their application that 50% of their revenues will come from the sale of food, which is fine until you look at the menu. And it's, I think there's a hot dog on there, there's some pizzas, and there's some other stuff. And so they better sell a lot of those if the ratio of food to alcohol sales is going to be split 50-50. That's not being sarcastic, that's just, again, if we're building it up as a restaurant, a gathering place for adults to have fun and recreation, that's great. But bleed over is what happens to the community after the consumption goes too long. So I think the 12 o'clock restriction for the sale of alcohol is appropriate. It doesn't affect the operational hours of Section 2, so I'll be supportive of it. Thank you, Patrick.
Anyone else on the amendment?
Mr. Chair, I think I had the floor before I gave it up. May I continue, please?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Secondly, my point about the, Mr. Flynn's amendment, it says from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. In the same section, it says permitted per municipal code. Now, I realize we can limit it, but I really don't understand what this assault is on private clubs. I mean, people are assuming because there was one bad actor that they're all going to do the same. Why are we segregating private clubs that are nonprofits, that are doing good things for our community, that have never been in trouble before? Why are we segregating them and holding them to a way more higher standard in restrictions. I just don't understand it. I will not support this amendment because I don't quietly think they deserve to be segregated. I think we should start treating people fairly and treating them the same. Until they demonstrate they're a problem, we shouldn't treat them like they're a problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Horniman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm split on this one only because we've got a new operation going in place at the Northway Mall. And, of course, I'd like to encourage the continued development and revitalization in that area. That particular mall has been suffering a bit on vacancies. I'm not a concern that the Elks Club is not a responsible operator. By all means, I think they are a very good operator, or could be in this particular situation and location. My concern is that their application spells out that they would be selling alcohol from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. And so, therefore, recognizing, of course, Ms. Domboski's listed Section 2, Item 2, may change their hours of operation. I think Mr. Starr addressed that adequately. I'm going to tell you from my professional sense and, of course, my own snake bit portions, not only of the operator we're referring to from the VFW, but also the concern we just had in Midtown. So it's across the board. It's not limited to any location in town, and it's certainly a problem with the type of license, and I think Mr. Starr kind of described it. It's kind of a new approach to the use of a club license, much like we saw with the billiards license over on the west end of town, with pool halls being in that area of recreational license. So it certainly bears concern. I just want to point out, if this amendment passes to the Elks, what this does is, as far as condition, you could be your conditional use, your condition to use the operation, not the sale of alcohol. It's Title IV, that's ABC, that's all. We can lodge a protest, of course, but I just want to make sure you understand the conditional use, the use of condition by the condition set, it would be instituted in there, and if you were found in violation, you could be brought back before the body to have either further restrictions or, in fact, the conditional use could be revoked. So it's more restrictive, I'll give you that. But I'm also confused as to why, if you were planning on going past 12 a.m., why didn't you just put it in your application? So I want to make sure they're successful, and at the same time, I want to make sure we have good operators in the city serving alcohol. That's all we're really interested in the bottom line. We don't want a problem location, period. Period. And I'm not saying you would be. I'm just saying you've got some hours just spelled out till 12 a.m. So I think if you mean that you weren't going to serve past 12 a.m., I think it should be in there. It shouldn't harm you at all. And then there are, I believe, in a club license, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Novak, Mr. Wheeler, Ms. Tucker, I believe there's 5 times a year the club can have special events. Those just have to be applied for, posted, and I believe those might allow you to go past the midnight. I think just whatever the state law allows for sale of alcohol, if I'm not mistaken. Can anybody explain? I know they need Ms. Tucker, if possible.
Ms. Gray-Jackson. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Tucker.
Thank you. Mr. Horniman, through the chair, I don't know the nuances of the special permits that clubs have, but your point is well taken and supplements the answer that Mr. Wheeler gave to Mr. Trombley, that in this type of situation, in other applications, Mr. Flynn and other people on the Assembly have looked at operations of clubs, for instance, breakfast clubs, that were outside their hours on the conditional use. My understanding from the approach that you were and the body has taken before on other ones isn't inconsistent with what Assemblymember Dombrowski said, which was that the Assembly has imposed conditions. If the Assembly were to seek to reconcile this application, it seems that the choice would be to amend that section 2 to include alcohol service, to be specific, or to put something in the other paragraph that said that they would be limited, because as the applicant has explained, I think it's a fair explanation that they're putting down their normal, as Mr. Wheeler said, their normal intended business hours. And so we seem to have a slight inconsistency, internal inconsistencies within the form.
I'd like to proceed on this tonight if possible, Mr. Chairman. Is there going to be a problem if we're restricting the conditional use? I asked the club, would you be willing to accept the fact that you wouldn't oppose the amendment? I know you spoke earlier that you didn't see the need for it, but would you be totally opposed to being able to open up with that condition, perhaps with a review in a year? I think that's what was in there also, if I'm not mistaken.
I am hesitant to speak for the...
Please come back up to the microphone.
Sorry, I wasn't sure what the procedure was.
I mean, I think this body wants to allow you to open up and continue in
Absolutely.
the course of operation, but we want to make sure you understand what your consequences are and/or the parameters of operating.
Yes, absolutely. And just to explain why the form is filled out the way the form is filled out, I think you have it in front of you, the form says normal operation business hours. And so by no means did we felt that meant that you could never sell alcohol past a certain time period. As far as I'm aware, we haven't violated any rules that would cause us to be restricted in some way that other fraternal clubs are not restricted. And so I would personally, and I haven't had time to speak with the membership at large, but I would personally still strongly object to this amendment. Our organization has done nothing to warrant said amendment. I know of no such restrictions placed on any other organization of a fraternal club style. Pool halls and other clubs were mentioned before. That is a much different style organization than a private club with paid members and elected board officers, house committees, managers. It's a much different style operation. And so I would strongly oppose an amendment restricting our operations to merely normal business hours of 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., or vice versa.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Trump. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Flynn for proposing this amendment, because after all, he represents this district. But I have to say that, and I wouldn't do this under normal circumstances because it is his district, but I don't agree with him. I really agree with the comments that Ms. Dembowski made, because it makes sense. And this is unlike the Shriners Club, which is in my district, where they're right across the street from a bunch of houses. You know, you guys did your homework. You found a place that is clear of residents, and you haven't committed a crime yet, and I really don't want to punish you before you commit a crime, because I don't think that's fair. The only thing I have to say that you didn't do that you should have done is, talk to the community council first. But I'm hopeful that when you do talk to the community council, that there won't be any issues, and mostly because it's not in a residential area. But I have to vote no on Mr. Flynn's amendment and vote to approve this and let you move on. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Steele.
Yes, thank you. I guess I have a problem with the amendment before us in terms of limiting this. This doesn't have any of the attributes that the other organizations. Well, doesn't have all the attributes certainly, and very few of them that some of the other organizations are where we have put this on them. I guess I would like to give the applicant a chance to amend the application, except that would probably get them back to square zero and have to resubmit it and go through review and all that kind of stuff again. I just think that we have no basis for this particular constraint. and the applicant's explanation to me is very logical in terms of that's when they intend to, but they didn't intend to have the limitation of that. And so I would recommend to my fellow assembly members that we vote down the amendment and that we insert in item 2 not only operation but also alcohol service. Thank you.
Ms. Johnston?
Yes, I have a question for council. My memory that with the VFW bar, we did not put this restriction on them. And if we did this with this club, would the ABC board consider this capricious?
Mr. Wheeler?
Through the chair, Assembly Member Johnston, this is a condition you're considering for the conditional use permit, i.e. the land use permit that you grant. So this action item is not trying to impose conditions on the license. So this would be something that would be solely in the purview of the Assembly and the municipality in terms of enforcement and so forth.
But it was my understanding when we were working on the conditional use permit with VFW that we had to not overtax their system in such a way. I mean, our conditional use permit, like I had discussed, maybe closing at 11 on weeknights and midnight on weekends, and it was suggested that that was being arbitrary and capricious.
Through the chair, Assembly Member Johnson, I don't recall the particulars on the hours. I think the difference here that Assemblymember Steele and others have noted is that in that particular case, there were issues about noise, live music, and so on. So there was evidence in the record that later hours of operation, as it may relate to noise and the impact on the residential neighborhood, was an important issue, and you had a basis to deal with that. So far tonight, I'm not sure that I've heard that same tie between what's factually available to you and the justification for the limited hours. And that gets to your issue about whether or not you have a reasonable basis to defend the Assembly's decision on this point.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, on that point.
Mr. Trainee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be voting with Mr. Flynn on this. The conditional use process is our avenue to deal with liquor licenses, and it's solely our area. So I see no problem with them closing down at 12. It's what they asked for when they filed the original request for it.
Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick couple of comments in response to the discussion, which has been very good. Thank you. First, the standard is actually arbitrary and capricious, and this amendment can't be seen as arbitrary since it simply reflects the application's actual data. So therefore, it doesn't. Even if the board would somehow consider this to be inappropriate, they really can't, because it does in fact meet the standard of being consistent with the application. Secondly, and Ms. Dembowski and Mr. Steele, I appreciate your comments. Obviously, I'm not inclined to punish people for things they haven't done either. However, I will give you this caution. And it's a two-part caution. The first is, we have seen these licenses abused in the past. And as Mr. Starr pointed out, it's a relatively new mechanism to the industry. And the second is, what we have found when we have dealt with problem operators is that removing a license once granted or imposing additional conditions once granted is an extraordinarily difficult process. It is much easier to impose reasonable conditions at the outset and then loosen them as they prove themselves to be a responsible operator. With that, Mr. Chairman, I welcome the vote.
Thank you. No one else is in the queue. Please vote on the amendment. Mr. Starr and Mr. Flynn?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. That motion fails. 4-7, or 7-4. We're back to the original motion. Mr. Steele?
Yes, let me read and make the amendment official based upon what I was talking about in terms of Section 2, Paragraph 2. I would like to have it read, all uses shall conform except that the licensee may change the hours of operation listed on the application, including the hours of alcohol service, in accordance with all applicable laws without having to modify the conditional use.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Steele, for your amendment, but, and somebody can correct me, but I don't think that that's even necessary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thankfully, it allows for that here.
Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote on the amendment. Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We're now back to the original motion as amended. Seeing Mr. Trombley?
I would just say that, I want you guys to go forth and prosper. As Mr. Flynn said, I agree with Mr. Flynn in the sense that we've seen this before and we've been burned and people come back to us and they yell at us, why are you letting people do this? However, at the same time, I understand that you haven't yet to do anything wrong. And so I would just encourage you to be very, very diligent, because I can tell you that if it doesn't look good for us to allow this to go through as we have, for it only to come back and get burned. And if we come back and we get burned, the tendency is to go overboard on the restrictions or pull it all together. And I really don't want to go down that road. So I know you guys are, everybody's going to be TAM certified. I know that you're going to do the training. I know you guys are going to do it right. And I just urge you to just make sure you cross every T and dot every I, because there is going to be a microscope in this sense. So, but I urge approval.
Ms. Dembowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo the sentiments of Mr. Trombley. I will fight hard to protect people's rights and to make sure that you're treated fairly, the same as others. But I will be equally as hard if you violate those rules. I am not going to be one of these people that say, oh, we'll forgive you one time. I firmly believe rules are in place, laws are in place, especially when it comes to alcohol service. And if you violate it, I will vote to take your conditional use permit. And as long as you know that up front, I have every bit of faith. You're law-abiding citizens. You'll do what's right. And so I just appreciate the sentiments of Mr. Trombley very much. And I appreciate the body giving these people a chance just to be a citizen and exercise their rights just the same as so many other operators in this town do. And so many of them operate well. So just thank you very much and good luck to you. And hopefully we'll see you back only in positive times.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Starr?
Well, I appreciate the comments. However, I've done some research, and I'm going to vote to support this. But Mr. Flynn's secondary comments of caution are duly noted in that it's extremely difficult. And I was initially led to believe that we could simply just revoke the conditional use permit and start over. Mr. Flynn has eloquently talked about it, is that it's very burdensome to do that. The Assembly's prerogative, should the complaints stack up or should the police calls go numbersome, become very cumbersome in the public process and quite frankly very expensive to retrieve or redo these critical items. And so I think there's some work to be done on how all these conditional uses, as well as when you have a problem with the conditional use, what is done. And I won't bore the body with it because I'm on the phone as well, but you have administrative functions that have to occur. Ms. Johnson knows some of those in their hearings, administrative hearings, and a whole host of other things. And so I would hope that's not what happens with this one, but bear warning that the conditional use process isn't in our control once it's led to the location. It very much is go free and prosper, and then it comes back ultimately to us. But a lot of stuff has to happen when a performance is poor, and that's just a note of caution. I'm learning a lot as I go. It's not as simple a matter of, as Ms. Dembowski says, I'll vote no on it. We won't have that chance very easily. So, note of caution, I'll support, but as the neighborhoods wake up to what's in their backyard, they may not like it. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
Thank you for the comments, and I echo the concerns, and I've said it before. turns out that with the redrawing our districting lines, I believe, looking at our map, that you're actually East Anchorage, so Mr. Trombley in our district right now. So you're currently in Airport Heights Community Council zone, if I'm looking at the maps correctly as well. So please make sure you get on their agenda and let them know you're going to be there and what you're planning on doing. Mr. Chairman, and to the indulgence of the body, and I'm not sure where this would fit in, if it looks like item number 7 on page 2, starting at line 17, talks about the use of the property and permitted purposes and shall comply. I know that Mr. Starr in the AM had suggested that we approve this on the condition that we review the applicant's history in 1 year from the approval, and I think that's a prudent thing to do. And that what that would do then for the Elks Lodge is to make sure that you bring us back that, if you do have to go outside your hours that you normally posted, particularly in selling alcohol, we'd want to know, for instance, what purpose and for how long and, how many times, so that in 1 year we could look to see if it's something we need to look at on either be more restrictive or less for your conditional use. So I'd like to make that a motion.
Second.
And I'd likely it would fall under line 7. So adding on that this the use approved under conditional use of this permit shall be reviewed in 1 year from the date of approval. Is it?
Mr.
Chairman?
Yes, just
It's redundant.
Yeah.
Okay. It looks like it is.
Yeah,
I see it.
you don't need to do that.
Section 3. Okay. Never mind. So it's already in here. So we're probably going to be looking at you.
Call a question.
Okay, Mr. Starr, is that why you wanted to share it's already there?
Yeah. So I'll withdraw that motion. Thank you.
Absolutely. I say withdraw the motion.
Withdraw the motion.
Okay. Mr. Birch?
I'm just calling the question.
Takes a 2/3 vote.
I appreciate that, but I need a second to your calling the question.
I'll second it. It takes a 2/3 vote.
Okay, well, we've got a motion and a second to call the motion.
Is there any objection?
Any objection? And see none, please vote. And this is on the original motion as amended. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
No.
Mr. Starr was a yes. Mr. Flynn was a no. That motion passes 10-1. We now have before us item 14F, AR number 168, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving an alcoholic beverage conditional use for a package store use and license number 2836 in the B3 SL district for Sam's West Incorporated, doing business as Sam's Club, 6602 at 1074 North Muldoon Road within Gateway Subdivision, Tract A, Fragment Lot 17B4. Generally located north of the Glen Highway and west of South Muldoon Road in Anchorage. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for
Move
action.
to approve.
Second.
Seeing no one in the queue for discussion, Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Chairman, to the applicant, I notice on here the Northeast Community Council did not comment. They comment on everything. Did this go to the Northeast Community Council?
It did. Mr. Chairman, if I might answer that.
Yes, Mr. Horniman.
Through the Chair, Mr. Trainee, the Northeast Community Council chose to take no stand officially on this particular.
So it did go to them.
It did go to them. There was some confusion. Apparently, there's the Walmart that's going in at a different location. It was initially going to be Walmart and Sam's Club on the same property, but they chose not to comment. In fact, from their discussion, being present in the meeting, there is some concern about small bottle sales at the Walmart package store soon to be open, but or petitioned. But the Sam's Club sells large items. They have no problem with that.
Thank you, Mr. Holman.
Okay, Mr. Horniman, you're in the queue.
That's what I was going to address.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote.
Chairman,
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Starr.
I have an amendment.
Yes.
It's on packet page 929, and it's on line 32. no, and I would like to propose that no external advertisement relative to alcohol be allowed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend.
I have a question for Mr. Starr.
Yes, Mr. Trombley.
Mr. Starr, I know that this is the reason for your amendment follows what the Walmart did out in Chugach Eagle River there, but that was also a desire of the community council. Since Mr. Holmes and I's community council did not make any recommendations, is there a specific reason as to why you would like to impose that upon this one?
Well, two points of correction there. The community council in Eagle River actually didn't approve the alcohol sales permit for the local Walmart store. I actually overruled that as an assembly member. But the tradition on this food court concept, and not that you would have the allowability to have curbside sampling of any alcohol, the trend is to have sort of the beer truck show up or the wine distributor or those show up. And I think when they bleed out into the parking lot with the bikini clad or the balloons that say Budweiser on them, I think it goes a little bit too far into the circus atmosphere, and I think that's probably the restriction where it's coming from. Is I've seen this occur in other places, and I think when they take it outside the liquor store, it goes beyond what I think is appropriate.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Starr. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comment on the amendment? Seeing none, please vote. Can't reset the vote.
All the technical operations not working again.
Well, that's because we had a prior vote.
Can you reset it?
You have to reset it.
Come in, log out again. I need to close out again. Please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries 6-5. That amendment passes 6-5. We're now back to the original motion as amended. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Yes.
just comment for a moment.
Yes, Mr. Starr.
Well, I'm not trying to pontificate, but I've been on the body for a while, and I want to have due reference to some of the other liquor vendors in the region there. What I had to go through with the Brown Jug distributor that applied to us in very much the same forum, I think it was borne true that that's sort of a destination shopping center, a bulk grocery arrangement. And I think that some of the hoops that Brown Jug had to jump through, when we comment that, we need to learn from our wisdom. And that this is not going to be a troublesome site. I think Sam's Club, even though my restriction on their advertising, will do well. I can't imagine that they won't. The store is huge. It's beautiful. It's well invested, and I'm encouraging that they'll be able to make a profit over the overall store. But again, where we need to make sure is we put logic to these conditional uses and make sense of them almost one at a time. And although I appreciate calling the question, I think that it's appropriate to vet these. This is the only time we get to see these folks. We'll see them in a year upon expiration, perhaps, but only if there's significant problems. So I think it is worth our time to flesh them out, the due diligence, and not be punitive on those operators that have proven to be good. And I think these folks will prove to be good. And again, it's a pleasure to approve that, again, with the sales, the revenue, and all the other things that go into profitable stores with employment and of course, property taxes. So urge approval, but just caution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone representing Sam's Club here this evening? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Michael White. I'm counsel for Walmart, Inc. and Sam's Club. Sam's Club West is the actual ownership of this license. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the body has.
The main question that I have to ask of you is, do you have a problem with this restriction that was put in regards to no outside advertising?
I don't believe so. I think that that's their policy anyway. I remember I worked with Mr. Starr back on the Eagle River issue, and I believe it is actually Walmart's policy that they do not have outside advertisement on any of their stores.
Appreciate that. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14G. It is AO number 75, an ordinance authorizing a long-term lease between the municipality of Anchorage as lessor, and Hiller LLC, a limited liability company as lessee of Lot 8C, Block 2, Merrill-Field Replat Edition number 6, located between runway O/75 and East 5th Avenue. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second, and no one in the queue. Please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14H, AO number 77, an ordinance to the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 7 to clarify and provide for assembly approval of certain contracts. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Second.
Mr. Trombley.
Is Mr. Wheeler still here? No? I would like to know what this would do as far as administratively to the Department of Law if you had to come for us for every contract over $10,000. Would this slow down your operations? What would be the ramifications for your day-to-day life if this passed?
Julia and I worked with the law department to break this down to where it would not cause them any problems. That's the reason things like calling expert witnesses, we have that exempt from it. And we did work with the Department of Law, and Julia can step in with this. We worked with them to make sure this would not affect their day-to-day operation. We found the areas that they had problems with, we dropped it off.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Todd? Or is Mr. Wheeler here?
He just left, but one of the things I'd add that we did discuss, there are occasions where you need a lawyer who's a specialist in an area where there might be like a environmental catastrophe of some sort, and you need to retain a lawyer immediately who's a specialist in that area. And in that kind of thing, those types of lawyers who are specialists in areas, it's not at all unusual where they might be in the $400 to $500 range. And so something like a $10,000 limit, that would be gone in 2.5 work days. Now, it's not real often that you encounter that sort of thing, but that's just in answer to your question. And then, you know, how many lawyers would want to take a contract when they don't know if they're going to get beyond that 2.5 day range?
Is that all, Mr. Trombley? Mr. Trini?
That's all. Like I said, Julia can step in, Mr. Chairman, because she was working with Mr. Wheeler on this.
Okay.
Julia, we worked with the Department of Law on this and purchasing.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair, we did work with purchasing and also had the benefit of some comments from Mr. Wheeler when he was reviewing an earlier draft and the concept And so it isolated contracts and made it the equal for assembly approval, the chair's approval, and the administration's approval.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really pleased to be a co-sponsor of this ordinance because it's another example and providing transparency in municipal government to the public that we serve. And I think that we just missed one area. And with that said, I'd like to make an amendment. And the amendment is on page 2, line 14, right after analysis. My amendment would read, and any contract relating to labor relations.
Second.
And I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion on the amendment. Seeing, hearing none, please vote on the amendment. Mr. Starr and Mr. Flynn, did you hear the amendment?
I did, and I vote no.
Okay. Please
Yes,
vote.
I'll vote yes.
Okay. That motion passes 6-5. We're back to the original motion, and I have Mr. Birch in the queue.
I am opposed to this. I think it's an unreasonable and unwarranted intrusion into the administration's ability to manage the city and to manage the tasks and the budget that we provide them on an annual basis. There's a discussion about transparency. Earlier this evening, we deferred to the end of the meeting, a report that we get every month that reports the basically the expenditures that we have for projects and for sole source procurement. So I'm a no vote on this and move to postpone indefinitely. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion.
I can speak to that if you don't mind putting me in the queue.
Okay, anyone? I've got Mr. Starr. Go ahead, Mr. Starr.
I was in the queue as well.
But go ahead, Mr. Honeman. That's fine. I can't see it, of course.
Are you speaking to the amendment?
Well, I was going to speak to this ordinance, but the amendment, if I'm in the queue, I'd like to speak on that motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I think, I feel that we've got, Mr. Birch made the point exactly. We've got a report that shows some actions that were taken in May. There is no specifics. It just says there was a specific contract given to what company and for legal services. It gives nothing to the public. It gives, I mean, I get questions all the time from constituents about specificity, and I get nothing. I have nothing to tell them unless we start dragging it down. And I remember being at a meeting, and I can't remember if it was a work session or one of our open meetings, and I asked a specific question. We were told an answer, and then later we found that it was contrary to what we were told. And I want to say it was at an assembly meeting, and then it was later corrected, some 2 to 3 meetings later. But there's nothing. There should be nothing done behind closed doors that we can't address. I think the law department talked about expensive, perhaps expert specialty attorneys. A couple of days. I think they know going in, or should know going in, if they have to contract with one of those persons, they have the authority to do so under a limited time, and should have be fully prepared to come before the body and explain what their needs are. So I'm not for postponing indefinitely.
Mr. Starr.
Well, I am, and I'll speak to it now or again. But I think the idea that we appropriate by department has to come into queue here, and we aren't the executive branch of government. We're the legislative branch of government, and we have the fiduciary responsibility naturally. But I also think that the executive branch sees things from a perspective that we can't, and we don't. We don't work there, and the idea that they may need to have and reach out to experts from time to time outside their field of scope naturally makes sense. It reinforces some of the reasons why we're trying to look to outsourced entities and other operations that are better at it than perhaps hiring and continuing to staff the executives that we bring on board. It's duly appropriate to bring on a resident expert in the field, whether it be labor negotiations, whether it be hazmat, whether it be pollution, whether it be port. any of the legal matters. That's a legal emphasis, but I think the idea that it reaches out into the executive branch over and above that. I don't see from the monthly reports that we have a violation of over budget spending, and so I'm happy to appropriate by department and step back and let them function accordingly. I think we have good checks and balances that report to us on what they're doing, as Mr. Birch has noted in the report that comes to us. It's not our job to micromanage. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the motion to postpone indefinitely? Mr. Trainee.
Thank you. Bill, I think you're wrong in a couple of aspects. First of all, is our process as an assembly and our responsibility to set policy. What we see with some of these contracts is they go for sole source bid. Sole source no bid, $25,000. A couple months later, they come back to us trying to up it from $25,000 to $100,000. Then the next time it shows up at $300,000. We need to get control of this because far too often we're told it can't be changed now because they're the experts in this area. They've already spent $25,000. We need to keep them on this project. We set policy, and I think the policy should be if it's over $10,000, it comes to us. So I'll be a no vote on postponing indefinitely.
Anyone else in the queue on the postponement?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I have one question for Mr. Trainee. Mr. Trainee, just to play devil's advocate, what would prevent that from happening with the $10,000 limit? I mean, they can always say, okay, we're going to do it for $9,000. They hire Joe Smith, attorney, and then they come back to us for a $30,000, $40,000 increase, and which we approve, and then they use the same logic. What does the $10,000 limit do that the $30,000?
You can get less further down the road at $10,000. You can at $30,000, sir.
Okay. Okay. Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote on the motion to postpone indefinitely. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
No.
Motion passes 6-5. We now have before us item 14I, AR number 156, a resolution approving the letter of agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 1547, regarding implementation of the Kronos and the SAP operating systems. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14J, AR number 157, a resolution approving the letter of agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage and the General Teamsters Local Union number 959 regarding the Performance Step Program. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body for action.
Second.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14K, AR number 158, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $174,500 from the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities Memorandum of Agreement between the Municipality of Anchorage to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Funds 231 for the Eagle River Traffic Mitigation Phase 1 to the Public Works Department. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14L, AR number 159, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $150,000 from the Anchorage Golf Course Capital Reserve account in the area-wide General Capital Improvement Fund 401 for capital improvements at the Anchorage Golf Course in the Office of the Municipal Manager. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 9E3. I don't have the... Okay, we've got a motion to approve in a second by Mr. Birch. Mr. Trainee?
I'm a no vote on accepting it for the exact reasons you just voted against this ordinance. There are problems with accepting this, and if you don't want to deal with it, fine, but I'm a no vote on it.
Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Starr? Mr. Starr? Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
I think we lost Mr. Starr.
Yes, no, I'm back.
Okay, Mr. Starr. That motion passes 7-4. That completes our agenda for this evening. We have nothing under special orders, nothing under unfinished agenda. We are at audience participation. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ron Lango. I'm here for a couple of purposes. One, I'd like to thank Assemblyman Dick Trainee and L.V. Gray Jackson for all the help they've done to support. My granddaughter was the one that was assaulted by the cab driver. It took a long period of time to get that resolved, but they were a great help, as well as the ombudsman. He was also a great help. I have one comment, and that is I would like to see a change in the ordinance to make it unlawful to ride in the front seat of a taxi cab unless the back seat is filled with other occupants. My 19-year-old granddaughter got in the front seat, and that's what caused the problem. She was naive and didn't realize what could happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no questions. There are no questions.
Thank you.
Just one from down.
Oh, Mr. Trainee.
Well, as we're working on the tax cab ordinance, it's a good time for you to bring that forward to us. We'll look at crafting that into it because it is a concern. And thank you. I hope she's doing better.
Oh, yeah, she's doing fine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else to testify? You come up. It's first come, first serve.
On any matter.
If we could reset the clock, please. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Michael Todd. I was here recently at your most recent assembly meeting discussing some issues that I have a concern with, and I feel it's surprising again, as I've said before, more people don't have a concern with, and that being fluoridation of the municipal water supply. With that said, I had touched on a few points there on the cumulative nature of fluoride in the system and how there's really no way to regulate the exposure level and what it is you end up retaining in your system throughout the course of a day, for example. And with that, there's a really small amount of increase that can become a health hazard. And I pointed out that at Fort Rich, they had an amount of fluoride that was added to the water supply there that was 3 times the normal level, and they shut down the use of the water. People weren't recommended to use their water with having 3 times the level added. So I posed the question, well, let's say you drank 3 times the water somebody else drinks, or 4 or 5 times, which would be not unrealistic. And with the cumulative nature of fluoride in your system, it's going to be there. You're going to have then an exposure level that was considered dangerous for the people in Fort Ridge. That said, It seems just a no-brainer that there's something wrong here when there's no questions about this being added to our water. It's a corrosive compound. There's many examples of this material with the people wearing hazmat suits having to clean it up at sites where they're adding it to our water. It's been spilled, it eats holes in concrete. They have to wear hazmat suits to then clean it up, but we're adding it to our water. It would be illegal for me to take these compounds and dump them in Campbell Creek, or in any creek for that matter that was a public waterway. It would be considered illegal. I would get in trouble, probably go to jail, certainly fined. But it's okay to have these compounds added to water that we drink. It just really doesn't make any sense to me when I look at that fact. The American Medical Association has advised that this type of water, fluoridated water, that we consider normal in our taps, that people drink every day, not be used in formula for infants. Yet there's no warnings on bills to people that are buying this water, using this water, and have no awareness of the fact that they're feeding their children a toxic compound that the American Medical Association does not advise they use making formula. But they turn on the tap and they make their formula and they feed their baby because they have no knowledge of this. We're not making them aware of this. It seems like, again, that would be another no-brainer that we would want people to be aware of a danger that the American Medical Association itself recommends be avoided, yet there's nothing being shown to the public, the general public, that is purchasing this. It seems reckless in nature. And that said, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello. This is my first time doing this, so bear with me. So I've been living in the state for 28 years, and I plan on living here the rest of my life. And this is something, with the defluorination of our water. This is something that should not be in our water supply. It's a poison, toxic substance that has no business in our water supply. And I'm just wondering why we're waiting. I mean, Juneau, Palmer, and Fairbanks have all got rid of the fluoride in the water. I don't know what we were waiting for to get rid of it. I don't understand. I understand you guys have lots of issues to deal with, but this one should be at the top of your priority list. I urge you all to educate yourselves on the dangers of fluoride, because it is a very, very dangerous substance, and make a conscious decision to remove it from our water supply. The people who oppose this matter are not going away. In fact, the group is only going to get larger. So unless you guys want to keep hearing about this topic, I urge you to educate yourselves and remove it from our water supply. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see you all again. Richard Evans, back again. Not here today, though, to chastise the Assembly or teach them good governance this time. Just down here for this ordinance Mr. Trainee introduced. I'm rather disappointed in the Assembly that it didn't pass. I read through it. I liked it. Missed it by a few minutes because, once again, as I've told you all before, I have a lot of jobs. So I kind of missed it by a few minutes trying to obey the speed limit and all that. It's kind of a good idea. But I'm rather disappointed that this didn't pass, because I like the idea of Mrs. Gray Jackson. I caught a bit of that where she said transparency in government. I like that idea. I like being able to see what my representatives are up to, including the mayor's office. And while some in this assembly and some in the mayor's office seem to be intent on stacking the public like cordwood and setting them on fire, I think it's a good idea to have a little fairness and bring some of our duly elected representatives down so they can put them on the coals. I'll bring the barbecue sauce. I volunteer. So I kind of, Mr. Train, thank you very much for this. I like this idea. Really do like it that anything over 10,000 has to be reported, because in my opinion, which I have voiced before, certain individuals put forward a contract for outside counsel so that they get passed through an ordinance. I think you're all aware of which ordinance I speak. AO 37 snuck it in under the radar right before 5 minutes before filing for a deadline. I didn't like that. I've testified before you, told you didn't like it, don't appreciate it. I have a very long memory, ladies and gentlemen, and I will not forget this, and I do bring it up to my friends every time I get the opportunity. Transparency in government is a very good thing. I'd like to see more of it, especially with this assembly and the mayor, who may or may not be paying attention. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak again. And I'm under my 3 minutes this time, Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi there.
Pull it down.
I'm a little short, so I have issues. My name is Amanda Hart, and I am for Fluoride Free Alaska. I am a single parent of 2 awesome little girls. When my oldest daughter was born here in Anchorage, I was encouraged to use fluoride water with them. I did not do my research at the time, but by the time I had my second daughter, I did. Research has shown that fluoride has caused a decreased IQ in young children. It is not recommended to use in children under 1 year of age. Against what the ADA has stated, fluoride does not increase tooth health. It actually decreases tooth health, and it can cause bone decay. So I'm hoping that as a city that we can get the fluoride out of our water for our kids' sake. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all?
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is Jason Agri, and I'm here to tell you that the best thing that the city can do to basically increase confidence, public confidence in your leadership, is to stop fluoridation of the water, because you don't have the people's consent, and you're medicating them without their consent, and more people are finding this out. And I think that the best thing you can do for people to have more confidence in your leadership is to look at this and stop fluoridation. I know some of you who have been on the assembly for a little while have perhaps celebrated it in the past, and everybody can make a mistake. And I want to basically say that you can do a mea culpa and just stop fluoridation, like Fairbanks did, like Juneau did, like Palmer did. Ketchikan did it right after the Hooper Bay accident in 1992, along with 115 other native villages. And you don't have the people's consent to medicate them through the water supply. Dennis Wheeler, our attorney, city attorney, calls it medication fortification, and using police power to put this in our water is just the wrong use of police power, because when you use police power, you have to pass a strict scrutiny test, which is it absolutely necessary? Can we get it in any other way? And if you go to any gas station, any 7-Eleven, any mom and pop store, any Walmart, any Fred Meyer, any cars, any even gift shops have toothpaste and toothbrushes for the people to use, and you don't have to try to brush their teeth through the drinking water supply. And it'd be just nice if you re-examine this policy and stop fluoridation. I think that would be a very welcome thing for you to do. And I would definitely welcome that. You know that. And I know a lot of other people would be happy to see you take action on this issue. And I want to welcome the new people, Amy Demboski and Tim Steele. And I hope that you can, with the new blood on our assembly, that we can perhaps have some new ideas about what is proper and what is the right thing to do. And also, Mayor Sullivan, it would be nice if you tell these people maybe to take some action on this and on this issue. I would really appreciate that if you could show some leadership in this regard. So, thank you for listening.
Mr. Birch.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Do you personally drink fluoridated water?
I avoid it, and I filter all my water have distilled water that I drink, and I use a shower filter to filter out the chlorine. But unfortunately, I have a place that is in a fluoridated area, and it would be. I know that some people here on the assembly. I don't know if we can have a show of hands on the assembly members who drink or who are exposed to fluoridated water at their house.
I personally gave fluoride tablets to my children every day of their lives while they were young because we were on a well water, so we did not have fluoridated water. But the fluoride is typically seen as a benefit. But I do appreciate your comments, and I think those that don't want to drink fluoridated water do have an option, at least in my view. But I appreciate your comments and perspective.
Yeah. Well, it would be nice if the option wasn't forced down our throat because it's expensive, and people who are on low income can't afford to avoid it, and they don't have the knowledge to understand exactly the chemistry behind this. I know that the children here are educated by the Anchorage School District, and I don't know if they do any chemistry on fluorine chemistry or chlorine chemistry, and the fact that if you add both chlorine and fluorine to the water, that you create methylated compounds, simple methanes. And the most simplest methane that's created is two fluorine molecules mixed with two chlorine molecules in a simple hydrolysis, which is basically a dissolution in water. And this creates the strongest anesthetic there is, general anesthetic. And the definition of a general anesthetic is that which takes away your awareness and diminishes your feeling. And if there's something we need, it would be a little bit more awareness with our children in town, and perhaps a little bit more feeling. It would be, you're welcome to give your children fluoride tablets, but forcing this on other people, I feel it's unethical and maybe wrong.
There are no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is still Daryl Lanzon. First, I would like to thank Miss Elvie Gray Jackson. I sent you guys another email. I sent you an email with the video link to Fluoride Gate, the study or the film that's an hour, 64 minutes long. It was released February 16th of 2013. It is based on a study that was a Harvard study released on the National Institute of Health website in July of 2012. This is the most current, the most up-to-date information regarding fluoridation, and it says definitively that fluoridation lowers the IQs of children. I don't have a child here drinking the water, so I'm not doing this for my child. I'm doing this for your child and any of the rest of you that have children, because it is time. In fact, the most recent thing that has come from whom I choose to call the fluoride Nazis has been, don't use fluoridated water when making your formula for your children. If it's good, why are they saying that? In fact, they are advocating less fluoride. They are advocating against fluoride. That's the most recent thing that they have come up with. It came out in 2012. That's what they've come up with recently. Prior to that, you have them conducting studies. And when we had the Public Safety Committee meeting, you had them speaking about it being a naturally occurring compound. Well, guess what? Calcium fluoride is naturally occurring in some instances, but that's not what you're putting in the water supply, is it? Do you know what you're putting in the water supply? You're using sodium fluoride. It's 800 times, yes, 800 times stronger than naturally occurring calcium fluoride. It comes mostly from the fertilizer industry, and it is industrial waste. We are not talking about something that is pharmaceutical grade, okay? Lastly, or also, because you know I can talk, other issues that come with this is the ethical issue. I do not have a prescription for fluoride. I am confident that none of you have a prescription for fluoride. I am confident that no one out here has a prescription for fluoride. So where are you getting the authority to practice medicine without a license? I don't know if any of you, are you a doctor because you're new? You might be, I don't know. But I don't think you are. And I know the rest of you aren't because I've asked you before. Now I'd like to ask, has anybody watched, besides Ms. Gray Jackson, watched Fluoride Gate or watched the 5-minute Dr. Burke video? Dr. Burke had 50 years of cancer research. He's not some schlub.
He is one of the founders of the National Cancer Institute. The graph and the stuff that he talks about is definitive. Once fluoridation starts, the increase goes up. And I'll tell you a little bit something about Juneau. Juneau ended water fluoridation 5 years ago. In the 5 years since they ended water fluoridation, their cancer rate has dropped 19%. Go ahead and check me on it, okay? Guess what's happened to the Anchorage cancer rate in that same time period? It has increased 4%. That's a 23% disparity. I would also like to lastly add, Mr. Honeman, you have a background in law enforcement. Is this true? If you found this on me, would you be suspect that this is potentially an illicit substance? Maybe. I mean, I think that most cops would think that. If you smell this stuff, it doesn't smell like any type of detergent. It has a medicine-y kind of smell, much like some drugs. And I have a background. I've used drugs before. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I don't now, but I have. So I know what they smell like. And I promise you that any police officer would think that this is a drug and that I would be harassed for possessing an illicit substance. Want to tell you what this is? This is borax. What your grandparents used as laundry detergent. I use this to keep the poison out of myself. When I go out to a restaurant and I have soup, I take the end of my spoon and I dip this in it and I put that in my soup and I eat it. I have to do this to protect myself from the poison you are putting or allowing to be put into the water.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi. My name is Andrew Pauly. I'm a resident of Anchorage and have been so for 2.5 to 3 years. When I came here, I thought, Alaska, this has got to be like the cleanest place. There's not very many people, a lot of bears. I look out on the mountains and I see the snow on the mountains. I say, wow, beautiful. I go up there. I hike through it. My son is now 19 months old. He comes here. We're feeding him formula, and he's a great son, great kid. And lo and behold, I find out the water is fluoridated here, and no one even bothers to tell you here. Like, what? Look at that. I see the glaciers. I see the water. And you have fluoridated the water. Daryl has told you a lot of stuff about it. And, his style is sometimes pretty aggressive, but he's right on with his facts. And I'd appreciate it if you checked him out on some of them. My little bit that I'm going to give you today is that, it's not right to be putting stuff, a medicine in water, a drug that's in water. It's not a way to deliver a drug. You can't dose it appropriately. You don't even tell people that it's in the water. The ADA in the Journal of the American Dental Association, they have an article in 2010 that indicates that it does increase the risk of fluorosis of your teeth. They try to minimize it. They say it's mild, but if your teeth are stained because your government put it in the water when you were a kid, there's nothing you can do later. You can pay money, but most of the poor people are not going to be able to pay money to get their teeth covered over, painted, whatever it is that the dentist will be happy to do if you have fluorosis of your teeth. I think it's offensive to do. I'd ask you to please consider it as something to look into seriously rather than to ignore. And I don't know how much time I have, but basically that's what I wanted to say. And I think you're looking at a lawsuit further from the little I've looked at. So I would think that would get your attention up and start doing some research, doing your research and looking at it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none. Any member comments? Not a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.